I thought I was meeting my mom for waffles. I walked into a courtroom disguised as a cafe. 1 second, I was scanning the menu for blueberry syrup. The next, I was staring at a leather folder with my name embossed on the front, like someone had already decided my future without asking me. Let me start at the moment my life split in two. My name is Lena Harper. I'm 27, a cybersecurity analyst, and I live in Portland, Oregon. I spend my days tracing digital footprints and catching people who think they can hide lies behind screens. What I didn't expect was to be ambushed in real life by my own mother. She texted me that morning. "Let's do brunch, sweetheart. Just us. We need to talk about healing." Healing. That word should have warned me. When I arrived, she wasn't at a table in the main dining area. The hostess led me past families, past clinking glasses, into a private side room that smelled like lemon cleaner and false smiles. Too quiet. Too staged. There was a long table, 3 chairs. Only one was empty. My mom sat at the head, hands folded. Across from her sat a man in a charcoal suit, laptop open, already typing as if I were late to my own trial. A pen lay on top of a thick document stack. Not my pen. Not my paperwork. I didn't sit. I asked, "Who is that?" She smiled in that tight way she gets when she's already decided the answer. "That's Thomas," she said. "Our family attorney." Our. That word should have warned me too. I felt the heat creep up my neck. My dad had passed away 4 months earlier. Suddenly. No warning. One moment he was calling me about a phishing scam. The next I was choosing flowers for his coffin. He left me most of his estate. Not because I begged. Not because I manipulated. Because he trusted me. I had helped him set up his finances years ago when my mom said it was too stressful. I built the spreadsheets. I organized the accounts. I protected him from predators. Apparently, I forgot the closest one. Thomas slid the folder toward me. "Just a formality," he said. "A redistribution agreement. Keeps things balanced." Balanced. Another dangerous word. My mom leaned forward. "Your brothers are struggling. Your aunt helped raise you. It's only fair everyone gets a piece of what your father left." Piece. Like my dad was a pie instead of a person. I opened the folder. Every paragraph screamed at me. They weren't asking for a gift. They were asking me to transfer 85% of my inheritance. Cash accounts. Stock portfolios. Even partial ownership of my condo that I had purchased using funds Dad specifically earmarked for me. I laughed. It escaped my mouth before I could stop it. "You're kidding." Nobody laughed back. Thomas cleared his throat. "You've been favored. We're here to correct that." That's when I realized something else. My mom wasn't nervous. She wasn't sad. She wasn't even pretending this was hard. She was relieved. Relieved that someone else was finally saying what she'd been thinking for years. I closed the folder. "No," I said. The room changed temperature. My mom's face hardened. "Lena, don't be dramatic." Dramatic. For refusing to sign away my father's legacy in a cafe closet. I stood. This conversation is over. That's when Thomas hit the button that changed everything. He turned his laptop screen toward me, and I saw my own banking dashboard staring back. Not just balances. My login history. My transfers. My security questions. My stomach dropped. "How did you get that?" I whispered. My mom exhaled slowly, like a teacher tired of a difficult student. "You really should have taught me your systems better." I felt something inside me snap. "Hold on, before we get into the real stuff, I want to know, what are you doing at this exact moment while hearing my voice? I love seeing your answers down below in the comments. Because what happened next turned this from a family dispute into something much darker. Thomas smiled and said, "We can make this easy, or we can make it very complicated." And suddenly, brunch was over. The war had just begun. The scariest part was not that my mother had my financial dashboard on a stranger's screen. It was the way she avoided my eyes while it glowed between us like a confession she refused to make. I did not sit back down. My legs were shaking, but I stood there, fingers clenched inside my coat sleeves so no one would see. Thomas closed the folder with a deliberate, careful motion, the kind used when someone believes they already own what is in front of them. "You access my private accounts," I said. My voice surprised me.
Calm.
Clinical. The way I talk when I am tracing an intrusion at work. My mom sighed. "Don't make this a thing. You taught me the basics, remember?" I just kept practicing. On my inheritance. I turned to leave. That was when Thomas spoke again, his tone shifting from cordial to procedural. "If you walk out, we file immediately." "File what?" I asked. "A petition to freeze your assets pending investigation into possible financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult." The words felt like ice water down my spine. Vulnerable adult. That was my father. The same man who built a logistics company from nothing. The same man who installed a firewall on his phone because I told him to.
"You are lying," I said.
Thomas tapped the keyboard. A draft document appeared. My name. My father's name. The phrase undue influence repeated like a bruise. My mom finally looked at me. Her eyes were not angry. They were calculating. "You always were the favorite," she said quietly. "Maybe this is just balancing the scales." That sentence burned deeper than any threat. I walked out anyway. The door closed behind me with a soft click that sounded too final for a restaurant. My hands were shaking so hard I nearly dropped my phone. I called my friend Nadia, the only person I trusted with both my tears and my passwords. "They have my accounts," I said when she answered. "My mom. A lawyer. They're trying to freeze everything." Silence. Then, "Where are you?" "Driving. I don't even know where I'm going." "Pull over," she said.
"Now."
I did. Hazard lights blinking like my own pulse. Nadia worked in digital forensics.
She did not panic.
She gave instructions. Reset everything. New devices. New authentication keys. Assume breach. Assume betrayal. When I logged in, my stomach dropped again. There was a pending transfer request for $32,000 to an account I did not recognize. It had been scheduled for 15 minutes from now. My mom was not planning. She was already executing. I canceled the transfer, locked the session, initiated emergency controls that most people never even knew existed. Then I did something I had never done to family before. I started logging every access attempt, every IP, every failed password, every fingerprint the intruder left behind. When I reached my apartment, the hallway felt too quiet, like even the walls were listening. I shut the door, slid down against it, and breathed until the room stopped spinning. An hour later, my phone rang.
"Mom."
I did not answer. It rang again, and again. Then a text. "You're making this harder than it needs to be." Harder. As if she were doing me a favor. That night, I slept with my laptop open beside me like a weapon. I watched login attempts ping from a device I had never used, from a location I had never visited. Each one traced back to a law office downtown. They were not even hiding it. At 2:14 a.m., I received an email from Thomas. Subject: Final opportunity for cooperation. The body contained one line. Failure to engage will result in legal action by morning. Morning. That was their deadline. They thought I would break, that I would cry, apologize, beg them to take my money and leave me alone. What they did not know was that I had spent 7 years dismantling people exactly like them for a living. By sunrise, I had a dossier, server logs, correlation maps, screenshots of unauthorized access attempts, evidence of credential harvesting. And one more thing, a pattern in the IP metadata that did not belong to the law firm. It belonged to my mother's home router. She was not being manipulated. She was the one pulling the strings. I did not reply to the email. Instead, I drafted my own message, not to Thomas, but to a compliance officer I knew at my bank. Subject: Immediate threat of financial coercion. When I hit send, my hands finally stopped shaking. But I had no idea how ugly this was about to get. By the time the sun rose, I was no longer someone's daughter. I was an active case file. My phone vibrated nonstop as bank alerts rolled in, each one a reminder that the people who raised me were now trying to erase me. The compliance officer, Mark, called before I finished my first coffee. "Lena, I've reviewed what you sent," he said. "This is not a misunderstanding. This is coordinated access abuse." Coordinated. That word was a gift. He explained that once a formal coercion report is filed, the bank can flag all accounts, but the burden of proof still rests on the account holder. Translation: I had to show that my mother was not acting in good faith, not just as a grieving spouse, but as an operator. While he spoke, another email arrived from Thomas. This one CC'd my brothers, my aunt, and 2 addresses I did not recognize. Subject: Family Asset Review. Immediate attention required. They were building a public narrative before I could respond. I opened the message. It accused me of isolating my father during his final months, of managing his finances in ways no daughter should, of refusing to cooperate with reasonable redistribution. It read like the opening chapter of a lawsuit already written. My brothers replied within minutes. "Why are you doing this to Mom? Just give us our share and end this." Their words hurt more than the lawyer's threats. I closed the thread and opened my logging dashboard. Every failed attempt since midnight had been recorded. My mother's IP, the law firm's gateway, an out-of-state VPN node that rotated every 10 minutes. Someone else was in the mix. That afternoon, Mark called back. "There is something you should see," he said. He forwarded a compliance summary showing attempted account access from a device registered to my mother 2 days after my father's funeral. 2 days. I had not even finished sorting his clothes. I drove to my mom's house without telling anyone. I needed to see the place where she had turned from grieving widow into financial saboteur. The front yard still had the wreaths people had sent. The door was unlocked. She was at the kitchen table with her laptop open, the same one she used to check recipes and message church friends. Now it was connected to a second monitor displaying spreadsheets that mirrored my accounts. She looked up like she had been waiting. "You're trespassing," she said. "This is your house," I replied. "I grew up here." "Not anymore." I stepped closer and recognized the interface. It was not consumer banking software. It was a third-party aggregation tool used by wealth managers. "Who set this up?" I asked. She closed the laptop halfway. I did what I had to do. "For who?" She did not answer. I leaned forward and caught a glimpse of a folder labeled Lena, reallocation. Inside were drafts of contracts I had never seen, including a power of attorney template with my name misspelled. "You were planning to take legal control of me?" I said. "You were acting unstable," she snapped. "You moved Dad's money without telling anyone." That was his instruction. "You always say that." That was the moment I realized the truth did not matter to her. Only leverage. I left before I said something unforgivable. By evening, the lawsuit threat was no longer a threat. Thomas filed a petition in county court alleging I had exercised undue influence over my father while he was ill. The court clerk emailed the docket number to everyone in the family thread. They wanted to humiliate me into compliance. Nadia came over with takeout and a second laptop. She scanned my logs while I paced the room like a suspect waiting for charges. "This is big," she said finally. "Your mom is not just accessing. She is exporting. Someone taught her this." "Who?" I asked. She pointed to a vendor ID buried in the metadata. "This tool is licensed to private wealth advisors, not lawyers, advisors." The name attached to the license was not Thomas. It was my father's former business partner, the same man he cut out of the company 5 years ago for skimming profits. My chest tightened. "You're saying he's involved?" "I'm saying your inheritance isn't the target," Nadia replied. "It's the distraction." Outside, my phone buzzed with a new message from my aunt. "You've gone too far. This ends tonight." I stared at the screen, knowing that whatever they had planned, it was no longer about family or fairness. It was about erasing me completely. At midnight, my mother sent me a single word that froze my blood.
"Comply."
I was sitting on the floor with my back against the couch, documents scattered like a crime scene, when the message arrived. No greeting, no explanation, just a command. As if she still believed She could direct my life with one syllable. Nadia was at the kitchen counter rebuilding my security environment from scratch. "That is not a request," she said after reading it over my shoulder. "That is escalation."
We did not sleep.
We watched the court docket update every 40 minutes as filings were uploaded. Affidavits from my brothers, a statement from my aunt, a letter from the former business partner claiming he had observed concerning behavior from me during my father's final year. They were constructing a narrative in real time, a story where I was not a daughter, but a predator. At 3:17 a.m., an unfamiliar process appeared in my network monitor. It was tunneling through a cloud relay I did not recognize, targeting archived email accounts I had not accessed since college. "They're trying to build history," Nadia said. "Plant evidence. Frame a timeline." We cut the connection and mirrored the packets. Every intrusion attempt was logged, time-stamped, preserved. By dawn, I had a folder labeled Counterstrike. The court hearing was scheduled for the following Tuesday. 5 days. That was all the runway I had before a judge could freeze my accounts, possibly even place them under temporary conservatorship. I drove to my father's old office that morning. The building was half empty, a shell of the logistics firm he had once loved. His former partner, Richard Hale, still rented a suite upstairs. I did not announce myself. I waited in the lobby, watching employees come and go, memorizing patterns. At noon, he finally emerged. Same silver hair, same confident stride. He did not see me until I stepped into his path. "Lena," he said too smoothly. "I heard you were struggling." "I heard you were still stealing," I replied. His smile did not change, but his eyes flickered. "Your father always did exaggerate." I showed him my phone with a graph of the data exports from the wealth management platform. "This is your license. This is my mother's IP. Explain the overlap." He glanced at it, then back at me. "You have no idea how many people access these tools." That is not an answer. He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Walk away. Let the family settle this, or you will lose more than money." Threats were his native language. I turned and left without another word, but my hands were shaking by the time I reached my car. That afternoon, I met with an attorney Mark had recommended, a woman named Elise Chun who specialized in financial coercion cases. She did not sugarcoat. "They are attempting a hostile conservatorship," she said after reviewing the filings. "If the judge believes you manipulated your father, you could lose control of everything pending investigation. And if I prove the opposite, then you do not just win," Elise replied. "You expose criminal conspiracy." That was the word I needed. Conspiracy. By evening, Nadia had traced the VPN node from Part 3 to a shell company registered in Delaware. Its director, Richard Hale. The same name appeared on a trust my father had dissolved the year he fired him. "They're trying to claw back what your dad took away," Nadia said, "using you as the lever." My phone lit up again. This time it was my brother, Evan. "Mom is crying. Just sign. We can all move on." I stared at the message for a long time before replying. "Did you know they access my accounts without permission?" He did not respond. Instead, another text arrived from my mom. "You don't understand what you're risking." I finally typed back. "I understand exactly what I'm risking."
Do you?
At 10:42 p.m., an unfamiliar courier delivered a thick envelope to my apartment door. No return address. Inside were photocopies of my college transcripts, therapy intake forms, even old medical questionnaires. They were digging through my past to paint me as unstable. I sat on the floor with the papers spread around me, my entire adult life reduced to ammunition. Nadia knelt beside me. "They are scared," she said quietly. I laughed, a sound that startled even me.
Good.
Because while they were busy trying to dismantle me, they had missed one thing. My father had trusted me with more than money. He had trusted me with secrets. And tomorrow, I was going to use every single one. The key to destroying a lie is finding who is most terrified of the truth. I opened the encrypted drive my father had given me 2 years before he died. He had called it his insurance policy, a phrase I never liked, but now it felt prophetic. The drive held correspondence with Richard Hale, contract drafts, and most importantly, a ledger of offshore accounts Richard had funneled money through before my dad forced him out. Nadia sat beside me, silent, reverent, as though we were opening a tomb. Your father was documenting everything, she said. He was building a case. The document showed years of skimming, shell companies, fake vendor invoices. The reason my dad had never gone public was written in a single email. If I burn him, he burns the family. I need leverage before I pull the trigger. My mother had not known about this. Or, if she did, she had chosen her side. We spent the morning mapping the data. By noon, Elise had assembled a response brief that reframed the upcoming hearing from a question of my stability to a question of organized financial crime. They wanted a story, she said over video call. We're going to give them one they cannot outrun. At 3 p.m., my mom appeared at my apartment unannounced. She looked exhausted, eyes red, but her posture was rigid like armor. You are tearing this family apart, she said the moment I opened the door. You did that when you accessed my accounts. She brushed past me and stood in the living room, surveying the scattered papers and laptops. Your father was secretive. You made him that way. No, I replied. Richard did. Her jaw tightened. This is not about him. I handed her a printout from the ledger. Then explain this. She scanned the page, confusion flickering into recognition. Where did you get that? Dad left it to me. The same way he left the inheritance you are trying to steal. Her eyes filled, but the tears did not soften her voice. You have no idea how much pressure I have been under. Richard said if I did not cooperate, he would expose things your father hid. What things? She looked away. That he was sick. That he wasn't thinking clearly. He was dying, I said. Not delusional. She dropped the paper. He promised to fix this. He said we would all be taken care of. There it was. Not greed.
Fear.
Fear weaponized by the man my father had exiled. Elise is filing criminal conspiracy tomorrow, I said. You can be part of that, or you can be part of the charges. My mother stared at me as if seeing me for the first time, not as a child, but as a threat. That night, my brothers called. Not to apologize. To interrogate. What are you hiding? Evan demanded. I am hiding nothing, I replied. But you might want to ask Richard why his license is linked to Mom's network. Silence. Then he hung up. By midnight, the family thread had exploded with accusations, denials, half-truths. My aunt accused me of blackmail. My younger brother accused me of greed. Thomas sent a curt email stating that all communications should now go through counsel. I forwarded it to Elise with a smile. At dawn, we filed. The motion included forensic evidence, metadata correlations, my father's encrypted ledger, and a sworn statement from Mark at the bank confirming unauthorized access attempts from my mother's IP. The court clerk responded within an hour. Hearing advanced. Emergency session. Tuesday became today. My hands shook as I buttoned my jacket. Nadia squeezed my shoulder. They thought you were alone. Outside the courthouse, reporters had already gathered, tipped off by someone hungry for spectacle. My mom stood on the steps with Thomas, face carefully composed. Richard was nowhere to be seen. Inside the courtroom, Elise spoke calmly, surgically, dismantling the narrative piece by piece. When she introduced the ledger, the judge leaned forward. When she showed the IP overlap, he frowned. Then Thomas stood. He did not mention my mental state. He did not mention undue influence. He attacked the ledger. Your Honor, these documents have not been authenticated. We request a continuance to investigate their origin. Elise replied, the origin is the decedent, and the investigation will reveal crimes far exceeding this petition. The judge called a recess.
My mom did not look at me as she passed.
But her hands were shaking, because she finally understood something. I was not defending an inheritance. I was preparing to burn the entire lie to the ground. The judge returned with eyes colder than the marble beneath his bench. Everyone stood. My heart hammered so loudly, I was certain the microphones could hear it. He did not look at me first. He looked at Thomas, then at my mother, then finally at Elise. Based on the emergency motion and supporting exhibits, he said. This court is suspending all pending actions against the respondent. My knees nearly buckled, but he was not finished. Furthermore, I am ordering an immediate referral to the Financial Crimes Division for review of the materials submitted today. The room inhaled at once. Thomas's face drained of color. My mother reached for the table, as if gravity itself had shifted. The hearing was over in minutes, but the damage was permanent. Reporters rushed the hallway. Cameras flashed. My brother stared at me like I had become someone dangerous. Outside, Elise pulled me aside. This is only the beginning. They will not go quietly. She was right. By evening, my social media accounts were flooded with anonymous messages accusing me of elder abuse, greed, even murder. Someone had leaked my college records online, the same ones left at my door. The story was being reshaped by people who had never met me. I shut everything down. Nadia tracked the origin of the leak within hours. It came from a PR firm Richard used back when your dad fired him, she said. They are trying to poison the jury pool before charges even exist. That night, I dreamed of my father standing at the end of a long corridor, reaching for me while shadows closed in from both sides. I woke with my fists clenched, nails cutting skin. The next morning, Mark from the bank called again. Federal agents contacted us, he said. They are auditing the accounts linked to Richard Hale. Your mother's access trail is part of the inquiry. I sat on the edge of my bed, dizzy with the speed of it all. What about the attempted transfer? It was reversed permanently, he replied. And we have frozen all third-party credentials tied to that wealth management platform. My phone buzzed before the call even ended.
Mom.
I did not answer. She left a voicemail. Her voice was different now.
Smaller.
They came to the house, she said. 2 men. They asked about Richard, about your father, about the computers. Lena, I am scared. I deleted it. An hour later, Richard was arrested. The headlines spread faster than anything else that week. Prominent businessman detained in financial crimes probe. The article did not mention me. It did not mention my father. It did not mention the ledger. But I knew. I had watched the dominoes fall in silence. That afternoon, Elise forwarded me a copy of the search warrant served on Richard's office. The list of seized items was longer than my arm. Servers, laptops, encrypted drives, client contracts. The same shell company Nadia had traced was named in the warrant. Your father's evidence cracked this open, Elise wrote. And your logs connected the family.
Family.
The word no longer felt warm. At dusk, Evan showed up at my door. He did not knock. He stood in the hallway like he did not belong there. I didn't know, he said immediately. About Richard. About Mom accessing your accounts. She told us you were hiding money. You believed her, I replied. He nodded, ashamed. She said Dad was confused, that you took advantage. I stepped aside and let him in. He looked at the scattered files, the diagrams pinned to corkboard, the legal briefs stacked like barricades. This is not revenge, he said softly. It started as defense, I replied. Revenge is just the shape it took. He swallowed. She is going to lose everything, isn't she? Yes. That night, the district attorney's office filed preliminary charges against Richard for fraud, conspiracy, and obstruction. My mother was listed as a cooperating witness. Cooperating. After everything she had done, that word was her escape hatch. Elise called me close to midnight. They want you to testify before the grand jury. When? Tomorrow. I stared at the dark window. My reflection ghosted over the city lights. I will do it, because this was never about money. It was about refusing to be erased by the people who thought I would fold. And tomorrow, I was going to say everything out loud. The grand jury room was smaller than I expected, like a classroom pretending to be a courtroom. I raised my right hand and swore to tell the truth. The whole truth. The version my family had spent months trying to bury. The prosecutor's voice was calm, but every question felt like a lever prying open a sealed chapter of my life. Describe the first time you realized your mother accessed your financial accounts without permission. I did not rush. I described the brunch, the private room, the lawyer's laptop, the pending transfer. I watched jurors' eyes sharpen as the pieces aligned. Then I described my father, how he had taught me to audit vendors when I was 16, how he used to joke that trust was just a system you had not tested yet, how, near the end, he asked me to safeguard his records because he feared Richard more than his own failing heart. The prosecutor introduced the ledger. The jurors leaned in, as if it might breathe. Who else had access to this drive? One of them asked. Only me, I said. My father encrypted it and gave me the key. Why did he not go to authorities himself? I closed my eyes for a moment. Because he thought Richard would destroy the family in retaliation. That answer sat heavy in the room. After 3 hours, they dismissed me. I walked out feeling hollowed and full at the same time, like a house stripped to beams that somehow still stood. Outside, Evan was waiting. Mom is spiraling, he said without preamble. She says she is cooperating, but they are asking about you, about your childhood, about whether you ever pressured Dad. They can ask, I replied. They will not like the answers. By evening, my mother sent me a message for the first time since the hearing. I did not mean for this to become a witch hunt. I stared at the words, feeling nothing. You meant for me to sign everything away, I typed back. This is what happens when I refuse. There was no reply. That night, the DA unsealed part of the indictment. It named Richard as the architect of a decade-long fraud scheme. It named my mother as a facilitator. It named my brothers and aunt as material witnesses. It named me as the reporting party. The comments under the article were vicious. Strangers calling me traitor, gold digger, liar. I closed the page, then reopened it, then closed it again. Revenge, I was learning, does not feel triumphant. It feels isolating. The next morning, Elise met me at her office. She handed me a draft civil complaint. This is separate from the criminal case, she said. You can pursue damages for emotional distress, invasion of privacy, attempted coercion. I do not care about damages, I replied. I know, she said, but the filing forces discovery. It forces your family to answer under oath. That was my real weapon. I signed. By afternoon, subpoenas were issued. Richard's former employees, the PR firm, the wealth management vendor. The net was widening. Evan called again, voice shaking. Mom wants to see you. She says she will tell you everything. I hesitated, then agreed to meet at a neutral location, a public park where children played on rusted swings. She sat on a bench with her hands folded, the same pose she had worn at brunch. I was afraid, she said before I could speak. Richard told me your father was going to leave us with nothing, that he had hidden debts, that only by cooperating could I protect your brothers. And you believed him? She nodded, tears slipping free. I did not think it would go this far. I wanted to scream. Instead, I asked, when did you start accessing my accounts? She flinched. The night after the funeral. I recorded the admission on my phone. She did not notice. When I stood to leave, she reached for my sleeve. Please, end this. I gently removed her hand. I cannot. Not anymore. That evening, the grand jury voted. True bills on all major counts. Richard was indicted. My mother was formally charged. My family's empire, such as it was, collapsed in a press release. I sat alone in my apartment, the same place where I had once watched login attempts like heartbeats. My phone buzzed with messages I did not open. Revenge, I realized, is not about watching people fall. It is about finally standing when they tried to break you. The day my mother was arraigned, I wore the same jacket I had worn to brunch. It was not sentimental. It was strategic. I wanted to remember exactly where this started, so I would never confuse justice with mercy. The courthouse steps were lined with cameras, but this time they were not there for me. They were there for the woman who once told me to heel over pancakes. Inside, I took a seat behind the prosecution table. My mother did not look back. Richard did. He stared as if I were an equation he could not solve. The charges were read. Conspiracy, fraud, coercion, identity theft. Each word landed like a stamped ceiling, a file no one could reopen. After the hearing, Elise leaned close. This will go to trial. It will be ugly. I know, I replied. 3 months later, the verdict came in. Richard accepted a plea deal. 10 years. Restitution in the millions. The wealth management firm settled with the state and lost its license. My mother was not offered mercy. She went to trial and lost. When the jury foreman said guilty on all counts, I did not cry. I felt something more dangerous than sadness. Relief. I sold the condo my father had helped me buy and moved to a quieter part of the city, somewhere no one recognized my name. I changed my number. I shut down every account that was not essential. The money that remained after legal fees went into a trust one named after my father, funding scholarships for students learning digital security, the skill that saved me when blood did not. My brothers tried to reconnect. Evan wrote long emails about forgiveness. The younger one sent a single sentence. I did not think she would actually do it. I never replied. The civil case ended quietly.
Settlements.
Confidentiality. Everyone wanted the story to disappear now that it no longer belonged to them. But I remember everything. I remember my mother's IP address blinking on my screen at 2 a.m. I remember the coldness in Thomas's voice when he told me walking away would be complicated. I remember the first time I understood that family can become an adversary faster than any stranger. Revenge, people think, is loud. It is screaming and smashed plates and courtroom speeches. For me, it was methodical. It was logging in silence. It was preserving evidence while everyone else panicked. It was refusing to be rewritten as the villain in a story I did not author. Sometimes, late at night, I imagine my father sitting across from me at the kitchen table, the way he used to when he wanted to teach me something important. I imagine him saying, "You did not let them take your name. That is the only closure I need." If you are listening to this and thinking about your own family, your own hidden battles, remember this. Manipulation only works when you doubt your right to stand your ground. And before you go, if this story hit you anywhere close to home, take a second to support this channel. Like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to Silent Revenge Lab so more stories like this can finally be told. Because silence is only power when it is your choice. And mine is no longer theirs to command.